Welcome once again to A Time to Remember. John Sheridan with you through until 8 o'clock this evening, and tonight we have something in the way of a special program. Remember Ivor Novello, the man who wrote songs such as The Dowager Fairy Queen, The Fickle Jade, Fields in the Sun, Glamorous Night, and his last musical of 1951, Gay's the Word. Well, Gay's the Word has been reissued on CD, on Bayview Records. And tonight in the studio I have as a special guest Brian Crossley, who was something to do with the touring company of Gay's the Word. Welcome to A Time to Remember, Brian.
Thank you.
What was your part in Gay's the Word?
Chorus.
Yes. And you were with the company after they closed after 704 performances or something in London.
That's right. Yes, they went on, this is 1952, they went on a tour around England, and then we ended up at the BBC doing it for television at Christmas time.
Oh.
So it was my first television show.
What year was that? That would have been...
It'd be 52, 53.
52. Still in black and white days, sadly.
Yes,
Shame.
Yeah.
What was it like touring with the company?
Well, I started in 1950. That was my first professional job with the Dawley Cart Opera Company. And when I left them in 1951, after the Festival of Britain, I started... I started auditioning everywhere and everything. And because in those days, like today, it hasn't changed much. You audition for everything. And very briefly, when I got into Gay's the Word, by then I'd auditioned for so many things like Paint Your Wagon, Wish You Were Here, you name it. I'd been toddled along and auditioned. And they looked at this little shrimp and thought, no. So I went to the Gay's the Word auditions for the tour. And my pet song was from Call Me Madam, It's a Lovely Day Today.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So I'm singing this song, and in the darkness is Jack Hulbert and other people. And at my best note, which was a nice little E, which I got very nicely, was this great big clap of thunder outside. And I said, God, what a voice, and went on singing. And at the end, Jack Hulbert came down and said, you said something when you were singing. I said, and I was so embarrassed. He said, I said, oh. He said, no. He said, when you hit that note, you said, what did you say? I said, he said, when the thunder. I said, I just said, God, what a voice. Said, sense of humour will have you. And I stood on the stage with the stage manager coming to me and saying, come on, Mr. Crossley. I said, am I in the show? And he said, yes. I said, oh. And that's how I got into Gay's the Word.
But sense of humour was what Gay's the Word's all about, really, wasn't it? Because it sounds a bit strange to us today using a title like Gay's the Word.
Well, her name was Gay Daventry.
Exactly. She was a retired...
No, she was she left the theatre to go and open a drama school.
That's right, in Folkestone.
And she did... You see, she was my first lead. This is my first really big West End show. She was my first really leading lady that I'd ever worked with. She was a marvellous woman, and amazing lady. She used to, for example, we had to stand on the stage at the end of every show with the curtain down while they play the national anthem.
Oh yes, I remember those days.
And then we'd all stand on the stage, and out of her dress, bosom would come a piece of letter. She'd say, your hair needs cutting, your hands are dirty. And she'd go all round. She didn't miss a trick. But she was a marvellous woman. She was a perfectionist. Yeah. And I just learnt so much from her.
Well, this is Cicely Courtnidge we're talking about. Let's hear one of the songs from Gay's the Word.
Immediately prior to London. Well, that's what it says, but it's not. After 5 weeks' rehearsals and sundry reversals, it seems that the show's not so hot. You kid yourself up to the night that you close with that rather sad cliché, beloved of all pros. It's bound to be right on the night. You've worked and you've slaved, spent all that you've saved, rehearsed till you felt you could drop. At the end of it all, it's a flop. It's bound to be right on the night. You've planned and you've dreamed, you've cursed and you've screamed. For weeks it's been tears, sweat and blood. At the end of it all, it's a dud. You're off now to sup, as gay as a clown, with the notice well up and the curtain well down. It's bound to be right on the night. The show must go on. Your last hope is gone when the critics in Leeds start to scoff. So it doesn't go on, it comes off. You begin to feel the lyrics aren't so witty. You discuss Act Two through vast amount of gin, and with not much now remaining in the kitty, you begin to think the plot's a trifle thin. Over cold pork, pink blancmange, and unripe Stilton, you a rather nasty supper with Jack Hilton. You cut, rehearse, rewrite Act Two in toto, build up your beastly parts it up all night. You're interviewed non-stop, complete with photo, feeling 89, but looking madly bright. Suppose the worst occurs, the damn thing flops. You wonder now, will Delphont buy the props? It's bound to be right on the night. For weeks you've rehearsed, you've sworn and you've cursed. How true it's tough at the top. At the end of it all, it's a flop. It's bound to be right on the night. That corny old line sounds all very fine, till you face what you've known all along. That it isn't all right, it's all wrong. I'm glad, the glamorous Gertie girl. The times I've had, a belted earl. Not so much renowned for any histrionic skill. I merely stroll around to give the customers a thrill.
She's glad, the Gertie girl's supreme. The man's a cad, the sexy in the dream. The passion that she kindles on the river here today. The scandals down the skindles and in front of the vicar of prey.
Knocking back the oysters at Romano's in the Strand.
Getting rather boisterous when an earl gets lightly can.
Or strolling through the cloisters with a bishop in my hand.
They're always glad, is glad,
I'm not quite sure what she said she had in her hand there.
Bishop, of course, a bishop.
That was Cicely Courtnidge with It's Bound to Be Right on the Night, and Gaiety Glad from the original London cast recording of Gay's the Word from 1951. Now, I gather it was Cicely Courtnidge's husband. Cicely Courtnidge, incidentally, being the Australian-born comedian. Yes, as Jim Murphy likes to say. It was her husband, Jack Hulbert, who suggested the idea of the show, apparently.
Yes.
To Novella
and he directed the show.
Yes, and Arthur McRae was due to, or he'd started work on the play, but he had to drop out due to prior engagements. And Scott Allen Melville, possessor, I'm told, of one of the most witty, malicious wits, unless you're on the receiving end, of course. And there's a lovely little song, which we're going to hear a little later on, Vitality. And apparently when they first completed it, apparently Cicely went down to hear it, and they offered her a cup of tea, and she said, no, let's get on with work. And after they'd done the performance, which goes 12 minutes, and you were telling me with that strenuous ballet and everything, she sort of went, yes, I think I will have that cup of tea, dear.
She was a great woman to watch. She used to arrive at the theatre looking immaculate.
I can imagine.
But she'd arrive on the stage looking like the Char Lady. And this came about because she was once in New York performing in one of her shows, Under the Counter or something like that, I forget which one. And she went to a matinee at cinema where they had actors on stage, and Eddie Cantor was the performer, and it was a rainy day, so she was in an old raincoat and a grubby old umbrella. And he said that we have one of England's leading comedians in the stage, in the theatre. I'd love to welcome her on stage, and he brought her on stage. she looked terrible, and that was because when going on this tour with her on the train calls, we weren't allowed to get on the train in jeans. We had to be dressed, and we had to get off the train dressed.
Just in case your public happened to be at the station waiting for you.
If you look like the dregs, people say, I'm not going to see that show. They look awful.
Tatty lot.
That sounds very quaint today when you think how we all dress today, but I thought that was marvellous. And one of her generosities, we were on, I think we were either going from Edinburgh to Newcastle to Edinburgh, but it was my birthday, and the kids decorated the compartment I was in for Happy Birthday once. And suddenly the manager arrives and said, oh, Brian, Miss Courtnidge wants to see you. She's in the dining car. And I thought, oh, Christ, what have I done? I've done something terribly wrong. Went along, there she was, and she sat down. She said, sit down. She said, I believe it's your birthday today. I said, yes, it is. She said, well, let's have a drink. And she gave me £25. Now she said, buy something useful. That's the sort of lady she was.
Oh, lovely.
She was just as marvellous. And I remember, you see, the show, Gay's the Word, starts as the end of a show. And she comes forward and makes a curtain speech to thank the audience. And she said, north of Birmingham, they don't know what we're doing. So she said, when we get to Sheffield, they go, hey, that's a short show, isn't it? over and done with already.
They go back and ask for their money back at the box office.
And she used to laugh at this. We used to laugh about this because it was true. They used to go, you could see their faces go, well, it's only just starting.
You were saying earlier on that on the tour it was the original London cast recording with the exception of
Liz Webb.
Liz Webb. Who replaced her?
A girl called Doreen Duke,
Right.
who incidentally ended up playing the princess in King and I at Drury Lane.
Oh, right.
And this was the last show I saw in London before I came to warm Australia.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, listen, let's have a listen from the original London cast recording, Lisbeth Webb with Finder, Please Return.
Ah.
Lisbeth Webb with Finder, Please Return from the original 1951 London cast recording of the Ivan Novello musical, Gaze the Word. And you're listening to A Time to Remember, and my special guest tonight is Brian Crossley. You were saying before, Brian, that the cast in Novello's shows tended to remain the same. Apparently, if you were good, he kept you
in the shows. And as you got older, so the roles got older.
Oh, that's sensible.
Sensible idea. Yeah. Oh no, they were.
You weren't here.
Quite a few in this show.
You didn't have any 80-year-olds trying to act 28 or anything like that.
No.
Just as well.
Dunstan Hart began, who played the prince in this show. He began as the juvenile lead years and years before, and he was a man about in his 50s when he came to do this show.
I was just looking at this cast list. It's wonderful. Amazing. Thorley Walters.
Yes. Well, he wasn't old.
No, not then. May Tomlin. Oh, gosh.
And Maidie Andrews. You see Bobby Andrews' sister.
This was Novello's last show. It was also unlike any of the other shows
Yes,
he'd done.
he sent himself up beautifully.
Oh, the
Especially in the
Ruritania
beginning,
thing,
the Ruritania
yes.
thing. In the beginning of the show, because the beginning of the show was the end of a show. And so there was flowers and big picture hats and chiffon and God knows what else, and hussars costumes. He sent himself up completely. and that was, I thought that was very witty, that what he did. He didn't mind. I mean, he sent a We'll Gather Lilacs, he brings that
Yes.
into it. Home Sweet Home, Keep the Home Fires Burning.
The
he
Home
brings
Fires
that up.
Burning, yeah.
He was marvellous man, marvellous.
Well, let's have a listen to another song from Gaze the Word, this time from Cicely Courtnidge.
If only he'd looked my way, just stopped to say a word of greeting, this let's pretend would end there and then. The very moment when my heart stopped beating. If only he turned to smile that little while, however fleeting, would always seem a dream to dream today. If only he'd looked my way. The first moment I was conscious of him was when I was doing my little dance. You know, one of those schottish things. Oh, they don't do them anymore these days, you know. He was sitting in the stage box. I saw a mass of black hair and a white gardenia. He always wore a white gardenia. At the end of the dance, he threw it onto the stage. It fell at my feet and I slipped. Oh, he was very upset. He came round at the end of the show to apologize. And the next night, and the next night, and the next. To me, it was a big romance. To him, just one of those things. And when he went away, which was ever so casual, I just went on dancing like this, wondering what it would have been like if only he'd looked my way.
Cicely Courtnidge with If Only He'd Looked My Way. That's from Gaze the Word. That's a lovely, wistful, sentimental song. It's so...
Typical Novella.
I was going to say, it's a bit of a cliche to say typically Novella or typically this or that, but it really does sum up the man's skill, doesn't it?
He wrote melodies and singable songs.
Yeah, memorable
And
tunes.
wonderful shows. Wonderful. And never signed a contract with Tom Arnold.
Who was the entrepreneur
Yes,
who put him on?
because they just knew
Impresario.
every show he ever did would be a success.
You were talking earlier on to me whilst we were listening to that, or trying to listen to it, with some of those wonderful stories about King's Rhapsody, which was the
Yes.
last show that
he did.
he actually appeared in before his death.
Yes, it's marvellous. Vanessa Lee was the star of that show. Do you know the story about Vanessa
No.
Lee? Well, he was rehearsing one of his shows and his leading soprano had a cold. So she had a friend called Ruby Mule who stood in the wings and sang for her. And I said, who's that singing in the wings? And they said, oh, this is my friend Ruby. Bring her on the station. On came Ruby Mule. So he paid for the nose operation because she had a huge conch. Changed the name to Vanessa Lee and wrote King's Rhapsody for her.
Good grief.
That's the sort of person you want to meet, isn't it, really?
Yeah. It's an interesting observation about the man's drawing power and the fondness that the British public had for him, that when he was in King's Rhapsody, box office did well, but when he
but
he was ill, when he left, it went down, and he came back not long before he died. It's
Well,
amazing.
he died after a performance at King's
Yes,
Rhapsody.
yes, early one morning. Ah, very sad. Well, there's a wonderful closer to Act One, which this is what I was talking about earlier, where Cicely Courtnidge, once she'd seen them perform the routine, Alan Melville and Ivan Novello, she just had to have that cup of tea. Well, you go off and have a cup of tea while we listen to a slightly cut-down version of Vitality.
Vitality. It matters more than personality, originality, or topicality, for it's vitality that made all those top-liners tops. Vitality. They each had individuality, but in reality, their speciality was a vitality enough to make hits out of flops. They could knock you for six. They had vigor and drive. They'd no microphone tricks. They were live vitality. The stars who gained our immortality knew with finality the practicality of something that's lacking in us. They all had vitality plus. Do you remember Gertie Miller? Ah, you wouldn't, I'm afraid. Maury Lloyd and Vesta Tilley's swagger came. Lily Elsie as the widow, Josie Collins as the maid, dear old Roby, Billy Merson at the lane. Ah, some gone, and some who still are the tops of any bill. Give me Gracie Fields in place of any crooner. Hetty King, still debonair. Phyllis Dare and Zena Dare. G.H. Eliot in the Lily of Laguna. Let the charm school keep on charming. Let the Bobby Soxers spawn. If you want to see vitality, see Dorothy and Sean.
Vitality. It matters more than personality, originality, or topicality, for it's vitality that made all those top-liner tops. Vitality. They each had individuality, but in reality, their speciality was a vitality enough to make hits out of flops. All the stars of the past are remembered today, and the reason they lost, they were gay.
Vitality. The stars who gained our immortality knew with finality the practicality of something that's lacking in us. They all had vitality plus. They had vigor, they were bigger, they had wonderful attack. They were workers, never shirkers, never blasé, never slack. They could thrill you, they could fill you with their energy and verve. They were servants of the public, and by golly did they serve. They were singers who were singers, nothing candid, nothing tinned. They were artists to the fingertips. Oh, I'm getting short of wind. They were zealous, they were jealous of the fame that they had won. They were vitally entitled to their stardom, they were fun. And if you think that vitality has vanished, well, that's rot. There's a certain Mr. Churchill who's still got quite a lot. And if you're getting really personal, I think that you'll agree, as a sample and example of vitality, there's me.
Vitality. There's nothing in the immortality, you with finality, the practicality of something that's lacking in us. They all have vitality.
All had vitality.
All had vitality plus.
Well, there's a lady who had Vitality Plus, Cicely Courtnidge, with the number that closed Act One, and apparently it used to be the tradition that at the end of the Act One closer, the gentlemen all charged out to the bar for their drink, but apparently with this they all stood and cheered because the number goes on for 12 minutes.
And it was very clever because it was a heck of a number for the chorus. It was very strenuous. It was very clever for her. She stood in the middle, surrounded by us, doing actions, but we were doing the main actions. And of course, the Seville Theatre, and indeed many of the theatres were air-conditioned. So
they weren't.
Oh, no. That's a modern invention.
704 performances. She would have struck a couple of English summers.
Well, she was all right. She used to walk off the stage, but many's the day that the girls used to pass out.
Oh, good grief.
But, the curtain would come down and would all collapse in a heap.
How old was Cicely Courtnidge roughly when she was doing this? She would have been
old enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very vigorous routine.
But that's the secret of good choreography. It looked as if she was doing all the things.
Yes.
But she wasn't. We were doing all the work.
A wonderful woman. I mean, we know, well, I know her from my childhood. I used to always fall about at Double Dammits, dinner nipkins, as she called them. And as for laughing gas, come away from that. Don't turn the tap on. Wonderful stuff. Well, let's have a listen to another track. This time, Thorley Walters, who was
This was one of his first big shows.
Oh, it was, right, because he was only in his mid-30s.
Yes, he
wasn't
would be,
he?
yeah. And this was, for me, it was a joke. Yes, it was. It was in this matter of minutes we're going to hear. He sings the song, and then the stage is cleared by the dancers, all in tulle and tights and whatnot.
Yes.
And then there's a big routine, and yours truly got into that. I mean, I'm going to cry.
Let's have a listen to Thorley Walters and A Matter of Minutes.
A matter of minutes and thrushes and linnets a singing where none sang before. I'm clearly, severely, sincerely in love, and I couldn't be loving it more. A matter of minutes since you wanted in, it's a miracle label express. I'm immensely, intensely, and densely in love, and I couldn't be hating it less. 5 minutes ago I was deep in the slough of despond or the slough. A spot of romance chanced to creep in. Just take a look at me now. A matter of minutes, but once you begin, it's a feeling you simply adore. I'm fairly and squarely and rarely in love, and I couldn't be loving it more. If there's still any doubt, may I once more point out, at the risk of becoming a bore, I'm not lightly or slightly, but rightly in love, and I couldn't be loving it more. I couldn't be loving it more. Minutes the world seems to grin, it's a moment you want to encore. I'm cleanly, serenely and keenly in love, and I couldn't be loving it more. A matter of minutes since first you came in, it's as matey as mustard and cress. I'm newly, unduly and truly in love, and I couldn't be hating it less. A short time ago my depression was deep as the deepest dug well, but after our 5-minute session, my motto is now what the hell. A matter of minutes, a sock on the chin, it's a knockout, I'm flat on the floor. I'm neatly, repletely, completely in love, and I couldn't be loving it more. Just to make it complete, may I once more repeat, if you've not realized it before, I'm just lately, innately, and greatly in love, and I couldn't be loving it more. I couldn't be loving it more.
Thorley Walters, the romantic lead from Gaze the Word with A Matter of Minutes. Earlier on in that song, Vitality, I remember Cicely Courtnidge singing No Microphone Tricks.
Yes.
It was all pure voice in the theatre in those days, wasn't it?
It sure was.
Now, you were talking to me about June Bronhill.
Well, I did a show called The Masters.
Yes.
I directed a show with June Bronhill and Dennis Olsen, which is the music of Noel Coward and Ivan Novello. And actually, Dennis Olsen sang A Matter of Minutes. But I made June sing Bees A Buzzin'.
Oh, which we're going to hear in a minute, yes.
And it's a patter song, as you know.
Yes.
And June really, 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 I always remember the opening night, she had difficulty with it, but she was determined to get it. And sure enough, she got all the way through it perfectly, marvellous. Come Dennis's turn to do a patter song, and he tried, and he looked at her, I always remember this, and he looked at June, and June said, well, don't ask me, dear, I've got through my number, it's your number.
That's a great help. You mentioned that in that show they were doing Novello and Coward songs. I couldn't help oh, I can't help reading this out. Noel Coward went to see Gay's the Word, and his critique. I mean, and bear in mind, they were very good friends.
They sure were.
Stinking with bad taste in the intermixed vulgarity of Ivor Novello and Alan Melville. Cicely Courtnidge, a miracle of vitality and hard work, but oh dear, with that horrible stuff to do. It was rapturously received by a packed house. But at least he was honest enough to say that about
But you see, he wrote Ace of Clubs before then, which was his turn to try and become the American musical sort of thing. And this came out, well, very shortly afterwards, so he's really having a dig.
Now, you mentioned about American musicals there. One of the interesting things is Novello's plays certainly travelled to the States, but none of his musicals ever made it on Broadway.
Oh, no.
They never even attempted.
But there's only been Dancing Years here.
Yes,
in Australia.
but nonetheless.
They've never done any of the other spectacular ones.
Well, here's our last number from Gay's the Word, and this is probably either my favourite or my second favourite. It's Cicely Courtnidge again, who else? And Bees a Buzzin'.
Bees are buzzing by the dozen, nature's so surprising. There's a shock in store for the man next door, it's spring and the sap is rising. Lambs are bleating, clouds are fleeting over the horizon. There are lots of larks in the public parks, it's spring and the sap is rising. Grasshoppers are hopping, the sun is in the sky. When I do my shopping, there's a nasty glint in the grocer's eye. Bees are buzzing by the dozen, crowds are fraternizing. Everyone, it's clear, has the right idea. It's spring and the sap is rising. From undercover, a worm will meet a friend, soon become her lover, and they wriggle off for a lost weekend. Oh, bees are buzzing by the dozen, hens are enterprising. Every dog or puss has the same excuse, it's spring and the sap is rising. Buds are busting, housewives dusting, birds are harmonizing. I've a brand new hat that'll knock 'em flat, it's spring and the sap is rising. Geese meander towards each gander, no use criticizing. Mrs. Thompson speak, better friend last week, it's spring and the sap is rising. Pulse is stopped to quicken, the old grey mare has foaled. Love is for the picking, it's the one thing left that's decontrolled. Oh, bees are buzzing by the dozen, gaily pollinizing. I've a small affair in Trafalgar Square, it's spring and the sap is rising. Beans are running and running from their pods. Spring is simply stunning, and in 9 months' time there'll be lots more quads. Bees are buzzing by the dozen, snails are exercising. We can all go gay in the newborn hay, it's spring and the sap is rising. The fact that the sap is rising.
About that.
I didn't think she'd make it.
No,
That must be one of the most risque songs I've heard in a long time. It's very clever lyrics.
Wonderful.
Americans would never dare to write anything like that in the 50s, would they? Bees a Buzzin' with Cicely Courtnidge from Ivor Novello's Gay's the Word. And during that, Brian and I were just chatting. Novello was very versatile. Brian was saying that, of course, he appeared in the Hitchcock movie Blackmail, and he also did Shakespeare on stage, Henry V. I mean,
yes, I'd love to have seen that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he was...
What if he sang the Agincourt?
He arranged it for dances. Can you imagine?
The Battle of Agincourt was marvellous. On point.
Well, but put tips on the swords,
Of course,
please.
of course,
Absolutely. Well, I lied earlier on. I said that Bees a Buzzin' was going to be the last track, but if we're quick, I think we can squeeze one more in, and this is Sweet Thames, Guards on Parade, the Ruritania.
And Ruritania.
Yeah.
This is where you want to listen to the bits where We'll Gather Lilacs and Home Fires, keep the home fires
Keep
burning.
the home fires burning. Let's have a listen.
Sweet Thames, run softly, sweet Thames, run slow, past meadow green and sunlit scene, where the willow tree bends low. Sweet Thames, run softly, sweet Thames, run slow, past waving reed where fishes sit, and the willow trees bend low. Sweet river, pretty, never hurry, take your Flow gently by where lovers lie, and the willow trees
Guards on parade, flourish each blade, fight for the right to guard your nation, steadfast and true, royalists who sing on the slightest provocation. You who have fought, banish the thought that our beloved land could perish. Guards on parade, never afraid, fight for the lilacs you have gathered.
Ruritania, the mommy lights and glamorous nights no longer constitute a raving mania in Ruritania. Ruritania, rhetorical kings no longer are things to sing about in Greece or in Albania or Ruritania. Our nights are now considered no longer glamorous. The only fellow is Ivan Novello who still believes in us. Ruritania, as nobody cares for foreign affairs, we're going rather swiftly down the drain, yeah. In Ruritania, in
A little bit of a potpourri there from Gaze the Word, Sweet Thames, sung by Elizabeth Webb, and the Cicely Courtnage in the chorus with Guards on Parade and Ruritania, which was really part of the opening routine.
It was the opening set, the opening
And
scene.
it's a wonderful disc, and if you're interested in Novello, Bayview Classics have re-released the 1951 Gaze the Word Ivan Novello musical, and it's available in reading stores, I believe.
And mention the
as we
bonus
speak.
tracks because they're interesting.
Well, yes, there are some fascinating bonus tracks. Dennis Martin doing If Only She'd Looked My Way. Frank Sinatra with an orchestra conducted by Axel Stordahl. And that apparently was done for a charity, British charity, at the request of a member of the royal family. And Melocrino's orchestra does a couple of orchestral selections. So it's a wonderful disc. Well, you were saying earlier on that Noel Coward made one of his typical comments. What was it? The two best things, Ivan Novello's profile and my wit.
Yes.
Well, that sort of brings us rather nicely into a musical that was approximately around about the same era, Ace of Clubs by Noel Coward. And I've sort of fond of this one in a kind of way because a track we're going to hear a little later on, Sail Away, I mean, in Coward in his best Handel tradition, took it and wrote a whole musical about it, Sail Away. Remember Maggie Fitzgibbon?
Yes,
did it here in
indeed,
Melbourne?
yes,
Was it
yes.
The Princess?
No, Her Majesty's Theatre.
Oh, sorry, Her Madge.
Yeah,
That's right. It
yeah.
was Her Madge, yes. Well, now you weren't... did you have anything to do with Ace of Clubs? You
No,
weren't...
no.
But you knew a lot of the cast
Yes,
from it.
yes.
Yeah. Was Coward the same as Novello, and he kept almost a repertory cast going, or did his tend to vary?
Not quite as much as Novello, but he did keep his favourites. Not his favourites, the people that worked well that he wanted.
And some of the people in this, of course...
Well, June Whitfield, for
yeah,
example.
June Whitfield. Yes, I was looking at that earlier. And Vivian Merchant.
Yes.
And Jean Carson. There's some wonderful things. The Hercules brothers.
Oh, there were three strong men, tough guy, and they'd come on the stage, this is Coward's Wit, and they'd go into this great pose, and there'd be blackout. And this kept happening. They never did anything except all through the show. They keep coming on and do this great, and you go, blackout.
Oh, I love it. Let's have a listen to Pat Kirkwood. She was the
leading lady
on the show. Here's Pat Kirkwood with another bit of a potpourri, one of my favourite songs right at the very end of it. My Kind of Man, This Could Be True, and of course, Josephine.
Gentleman of renown, but once we've met I'll never let him down. I want to find my kind of man, and I shall do the best I can. Not to meet or mate or marry Tom, Dick or Harry, till I find my kind of man. Good night, Harry.
Can't I see you again?
It'd be better if you didn't. Truly, it would.
Why?
Oh, I don't know. There's lots of reasons, really.
Well, give me one real one, and I shan't say another word. Chance brought us both together in a strange, unconventional way. Here in the starlight with the night all round us, destiny seems to have caught and bound us. This could be true. This could be true. Let's both be terribly careful what we say or do. We may find shadows on the stairway when we try to climb too high. We may find hazards on the fairway, niggers in the woodpile, daring us to try. But this could be right, love at first sight. Let's take particular pains to keep our flame alive. Let's face the fact that wonderful, wonderful moments in life are few. Let's defy those niggers in the woodpile, darling. This could be true. Josephine, Josephine, very seldom lost control, though her wit was a bit over-seasoned with sauce Creole. She very soon married this short young man who talked about soldiers all day, but who wasn't above making passionate love in a coarse, rather Corsican way. Josephine wasn't keen, and she made an ugly scene, till Napoleon said, "Pooh, you are just talking through your chapeau, Josie, oh Josie, go Josephine." I want to find my kind of man. I've never defined my kind of man. He may be a copper's knock, a city clock, or even a gigolo, but once we've met I'll never let him go. And when I find my kind of man, we'll start a 5-year
jivey plan. Maybe tinker, maybe tailor, soldier or sailor, when I find my kind of
Pat Kirkwood, the leading lady from Noel Coward's Ace of Clubs musical with My Kind of Man, and joined by Graham Payne for This Could Be True, and of course that famous song, Josephine. I love it when Noel Coward, the recordings of Noel Coward singing Josephine, he makes it sound so saucy.
You know, it's interesting, isn't it? If you come to think, in my humble opinion, I think you could do Ivor Novello today. You could
Yeah, I was wondering about that
But
earlier.
Ace of Clubs is really dated, very, very dated compared to Gaze the Word. I mean,
Yeah.
you could do Gaze the Word if you could find the right woman to do the show.
Absolutely. I mean, in an odd way, the title, it helped bring the audience in
Well, yes,
because
exactly.
the journalists would have a field day
Oh, yes,
with
they
it. And
would,
talk about
yeah.
inbuilt publicity.
Yes, exactly. But Ace of Clubs, I think, is dated
Yes,
for today.
yeah.
But I think you could do Gaze the Word. And I would love to see some of those. I also fear that with Ivor Novello, you could revive things like Glamorous Nights, those big shows. I mean, because people haven't seen that sort of thing on stage.
Would it be cost that
Nowadays-
perhaps would keep them off?
Yes,
do
but when you think of sets today, what they spend on
That's
sets
true.
and costumes.
They can land a helicopter on stage today. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
You know, and that was going to be our next show. No,
Oh, yes, you were talking, yeah.
It wasn't going to be. And so Saigon, they all went, oh, a helicopter landing. I felt like saying, well, Novella thought about that years ago.
Yes, back in 1952, he had that planned for.
yeah.
Oh. This next number we're going to hear from Ace of Clubs, which incidentally is also available in a revival or a reissue on Bayview Classics, is Sail Away. And I like this one because Coward obviously liked the song so much and thought a lot about it. He took it out and about 4 years later built another show.
Oh, a bit longer.
A bit longer than that.
So
wasn't it?
Sail Away's going on. Coming more our way.
I thought it was about 60s.
Oh, no, it'd be a bit later than that.
No,
Probably middle and 60s.
memory plays strange tricks with you. Anyway, here's Graham Kane. Graham Kane? Graham Payne. Let's try that. Where did Graham Kane come from? He must have been the understudy, was he? Yes. Here's Sail Away.
When the storm clouds are riding through a winter sky, sail away, sail away. When the love light is fading in your sweetheart's eyes, sail away, sail away. When you feel your song is orchestrated wrong, why should you prolong your stay? When the wind and the weather blow your dreams sky high, sail away, sail away, sail away. Why does love get in the way so? What have I done that this son of a gun should pick on me? Why, only yesterday my heart was serene and bright. Everything seemed all right. But now I'm struck by a charge of dynamite. Why does love lead one astray so? Tell me why. I want to laugh, I want to cry. I was gay as a sparrow till Cupid's arrow punctured this perfect day. Why does love get in the way? Why does love get in the in a boat on a lake with my darling, in the heat of a sweet summer day. There's the sound of the breeze in the green willow trees,
and the noise of the town fades away, letting time flutter by like a starling as we gaze into the infinite blue above. Hand in hand, heart to heart, just a moment apart, in a boat on a lake with my love. But when soon or late you recognize your fate, that will be your great, great day. On the wings of the morning with your own true love, sail away, sail away, sail away.
Graham Payne with Sail Away. Why Does Love Get in the Way? Or Pat Kirkwood sang that one. And In a Boat on the Lake with My Darling, with the two of them together, Pat Kirkwood and Graham Payne. And of course that's from Noel Coward's Ace of Clubs. You were saying earlier on, it's a shame they didn't record the entire musical. They've just sort of done bits and pieces.
Yes, I wish they'd done more of the cast.
I mean, it's a lovely song, Sail Away. And this next one we're going to hear,
This is famous. Three Juvenile Delinquents.
and the three juvenile delinquents being Colin Kemble, Peter Tuddenham, I think some of you out there probably will register something with that name, and Norman Warwick. Let's have a listen to the three juvenile delinquents.
Juvenile delinquents, happy as can be. We waste no time on the wherefores and whys of it. We like crime, and that's about the size of it. People say that films demoralise us, lead us to a life of shame. Mental doctors try to civilise us, psychoanalyse us, blimey what a game. They don't know how to treat us, for if they should beat us, that would never do. When they say go steady, we've the answer ready, and the same to you. Three juvenile delinquents, every now and then, when kind old cranks mention angels of light to us, we say thanks, and don't forget to write to us. Nowadays the younger generation never has to face brute force. Some old judge, instead of adulation, puts us on probation. Blimey what a sauce. Last night we got an earful from a rather tearful clergyman we knew. When he turned the sobs on, we replied with knobs on, and the same to you. Three juvenile delinquents, happy as can be. We break our backs to achieve popularity. Three sharp whacks, faith and hope and charity. Once we pinched a Cadillac and Rover from the Marble Arch to Kew. Hit a fat old geezer in the Rover, fairly bowled her over. Blimey what a do. We had to kosh her proper, then we saw a copper starting to pursue. So we cried vibrato as your old tomato, and the same to you.
one of Noel Coward's wonderful patter songs, I guess you could call them, from Ace of Clubs, Three Juvenile Delinquents, with Colin Kemble, Peter Tuddenham and Norman Warwick as those wonderful accented juveniles. Coward was great at writing songs like that, wasn't he?
Oh, he
Stately
was.
Homes of
Yes,
England.
yes,
and,
you name them, yes.
yeah, Let's Not Be Beastly to the Germans.
Yes.
And he
And you
was.
know, we must all be very kind to Auntie Jessie. That's one of my favourites that Dennis used to sing. It's marvellous. What a wit.
Well, one of the shows that you toured England, worked in, was, of course, Iolanthe, Gilbert and Sullivan, wasn't it?
Well, my first job was with the Doylecart Opera Company, doing all those operas. And then we rehearsed at the Savoy Hotel.
Well, if you're going to have to rehearse at a hotel, why not?
Why
the
not there?
Savoy?
Well, do you know that the Savoy Hotel and the Trocadero are owned by Bridget Doylecart? Bought by the process of the opera sort of thing.
Oh, good grief.
Then when I came to Australia, I joined the Williamson's GNS company in 1956 and toured. See, I'm very grateful to GNS. They took me around Australia, New Zealand, America and Canada and the British Isles.
And you had fun.
And since I've done that with Dennis Olsen, my darling Dennis Olsen, I've done over 20 productions with him at GNS.
Oh, good grief.
But we're going to hear something about Iolanthe, aren't we?
We're going to hear from Iolanthe.
Let me tell you about this very quickly.
Yes, of course,
This is
yes.
1951. I made 2 recordings with the Doylecart. We did Iolanthe and Patience. I'm waiting for Patience to come out. And I'd never done a recording before. It's like when I did Gaze the Word on BBC television. I'd never done television before, and that was an eye-opener. But the recording, I thought it'd all be very, microphones and all this. The chorus literally stood in the corner with a couple of microphones slung over them and said, sing. I was amazed at this. And the only person Martin Green used to sing right up against the microphone. So he'd whisper it like this. So you heard every word he sang.
Yeah.
Darryl Fancourt, God bless him, couldn't do any song without doing the actions.
Oh,
So he had to have a separate microphone because he couldn't do a song just standing up and
be whacking the singer next to him. Yeah.
everything.
Let's have a listen to the Pierce chorus from Iolanthe. Well, that's a terrible thing to have to do to Gilbert and Sullivan, fade out the Pierce
They
chorus.
understand.
Oh, I hope
Of
so.
course
But
they
we
do.
have literally run out of time. It's been a fascinating night. To Brian Crossley, my guest, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for asking me. I've enjoyed
And
it.
from me, John Sheridan, in A Time to Remember, it's bye for now. And, of course, my thanks to Stephen Clark, who did the panel for the program. Now, just quickly, before Peter Larson joins us for Chamber Music and Song, the 3MBS Lucky Subscriber card number for this week is 23549. 23549. If you have that number, then 30 bottles of wine valued at $750 are yours for the asking. Ring the station tomorrow morning on 9816 9355 if you have 23549. And you're listening to 3MBS 103.5. The time is 8 o'clock.